Welcome back to CIA Declassified. In 1943, the tide of World War II was turning, but the man at the center of the storm remained an enigma to the Allies. To defeat him, the Office of Strategic Services, or OSS, decided they didn't just need better bombs, they needed to get inside his head. They commissioned Walter Langer, a psychoanalyst, to perform a remote diagnosis without ever meeting his patient. Langer used intelligence reports in Hitler's own book, Mein Kampf, to build a profile that remains one of the most famous documents in the history of clinical psychology. Langer wasn't just looking for madness, he was looking for patterns. The 1943 report, titled A Psychological Analysis of Adolf Hitler, correctly predicted that as Germany's defeat became certain, Hitler would most likely commit suicide rather than be captured. A quote from Dr. Walter Langer's 1943 OSS report: Hitler has a belief in his own immortality. When this is shattered, his most likely course of action is to die a heroic death of his own choosing. End quote. Langer identified Hitler as a neurotic psychopath suffering from a messiah complex, believing he was a chosen instrument of destiny. The OSS spent over $100,000 in 1940s currency, equivalent to millions today, to interview everyone from Hitler's childhood neighbors to defected Nazi officials like Ernest Hanfstingel. I don't know how you pronounce that last name. Hanfstaengl. The profile claimed Hitler's extreme hatred was a reaction formation against his own feelings of inadequacy and his complicated relationship with his father. Langer hypothesized that Hitler suffered from hysterical blindness during his time as a soldier in World War I, a psychosomatic response to Germany's surrender. The report was classified top secret and kept from the public until 1972, as it contained sensitive details about Hitler's private life that were considered scandalous at the time. A quote from an OSS memo to General William Donovan: The Langer report provides us with the roadmap of the subject's irrationality. We can now anticipate his reactions to military failure. End quote. Langer was the first to suggest that Hitler used his speeches as a form of self-hypnosis, becoming more convinced of his own lies the more he repeated them to a crowd. The declassification reveals that the OSS considered using Langer's findings to gaslight Hitler via radio broadcasts designed to trigger his specific phobias. Dr. Henry Murray of the Harvard Psychological Clinic also contributed to the OSS efforts, describing Hitler as a counteractive narcissist. The study analyzed Hitler's vegetarianism not as a health choice, but as a fear of death and a desire to control every biological input. Langer's profile suggested that Hitler had a deep-seated fear of being poisoned, leading to his reliance on a team of food tasters. The declassified files show that the OSS tried to drop pornographic leaflets over Hitler's retreat to destabilize his self-image. Langer was a student of Sigmund Freud, and the profile is heavily influenced by classical psychoanalytic theory. The study noted Hitler's obsession with monumental architecture was a psychological compensation for his deep-seated feelings of physical insignificance. A quote from the 1943 summary: "He is not only a psychopath, but a psychopath who has succeeded in creating a world in which his psychopathy is the norm." End quote. The OSS analysis included a detailed breakdown of Hitler's sleep patterns, noting that his chronic insomnia often led to major military decisions being made in the early hours of the morning. Langer predicted that as the war progressed, Hitler would increasingly withdraw from public view, a behavior confirmed by his move into the underground. A quote from Dr. Henry Murray: "Hitler is a man who can only exist in a state of crisis. When there is no crisis, he must manufacture one to survive mentally." End quote. Despite the thousands of pages released, the declassification shows a massive redaction in the section titled Appendix G, the external influence. What is the agency hiding about who or what was really pulling Hitler's strings? Get ready for the theory of the Manchurian Führer. Speculation suggests the profile wasn't just a study, but a manual for control. Theorists claim the OSS used Langer's findings to identify a mental backdoor in Hitler's psyche. They believe the agency programmed a lookalike who survived the war and lived out his days in Argentina, while the black redactions hide the post-war location of the real Hitler, who was kept in a CIA lab to study the biology of evil. What if he was a medium? A dark rumor suggests the OSS discovered Hitler was channeling an entity from a different dimension. The speculation is that the redactions hide the exorcism protocols the agency developed to sever the link between Hitler and this interdimensional architect. The black bars hide the chanted frequencies that were allegedly broadcast during the siege of Berlin. Could he see the future? Some speculate the redactions cover Project Precognition. The theory is that Langer found Hitler had a biological mutation that allowed him to see 24 hours into the future, and the black ink covers the surgical notes where the CIA tried to transplant that part of his brain. Watch out for the AI ancestor rumor. It claims the redactions prove Hitler wasn't a man at all, but a biomechanical construct designed by a lost civilization, and Langer was actually writing a repair manual. Is the bloodline the key? Speculation suggests the redactions hide a genetic map that links Hitler to a specific royal bloodline the CIA is currently protecting in 2026. Enter the collective unconscious conspiracy. This theory posits that the redactions hide evidence that Hitler's voice was being beamed into his head via primitive electromagnetic technology discovered by the OSS, and the black ink hides the blueprints for the transmitter. Whispers from the fringe suggest the double identity theory. This speculation claims the redacted pages contain dental records proving the man who died in the bunker was actually a surgically altered political prisoner, while the real Hitler was extracted by the OSS to serve as a consultant on anti-communist propaganda. Brace yourself for the fuel signal theory. It suggests the redactions cover a section on how Hitler used specific astrological alignments to time his invasions, and that the CIA currently uses those same redacted cosmic calendars to plan modern geopolitical shifts. Is he still under the bed? Some speculate the redactions hide Project Revenant, a psychological experiment to see if the idea of Hitler could be kept alive through digital media to keep the world in a state of perpetual fear. And lastly, the thought weapon conspiracy claims the OSS actually used a psychic assassin to implant the idea of suicide into Hitler's mind during his sleep, and the black bars hide the name of the medium who performed the task. Was the Hitler profile a success? Scientifically, it was groundbreaking. It laid the foundation for modern criminal profiling. Operationally, it was a slow burn. While it didn't end the war overnight, the declassification confirms that Allied commanders used Langer's insight to psych out the Nazi high command. By knowing that Hitler would double down on failure rather than retreat, the Allies were capable to trap him in the bunker mentality that led to the final collapse of the Third Reich. As far as technological and operational breakthroughs go, the study of one man's madness changed how the agency looks at the world. Indirect profiling, developing the ability to diagnose a target's mental state using only open source data and intercepted communications. Psychological warfare, the birth of the modern influence campaign designed to trigger specific neuroses in enemy leaders. Political psychology, the foundation for the CIA's current leadership analysis division, which profiles every world leader today. And self-fulfilling prophecy tactics, learning how to force an enemy leader into the very inevitable ending predicted by their own psychology. The mind of the eagle was a dark place, filled with shadows and grand delusions, but by shining the light of science into those shadows, the OSS proved that even the most terrifying monster is, at the end of the day, just a man with a past. As we look at the world in 2026, we have to ask, who is being profiled right now, and what shadows are the analysts finding today? Thanks for joining us. Join us next time as we examine Operation Fairy. The agency went into the danger zones. We'll uncover the secret missions to move defector families out of harm's way. We'll look at the safe houses in Berlin and the midnight runs across the border to bring the wives and children of high-level spies to freedom. Join us next time for the Quiet Crossing. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.